Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we have severe weather on the way with storms including the hurricane force wind gust potential and large hail. Plus, flooding is another concern in the week ahead, and something big may be coming by next weekend. Welcome back everyone. How's it going? This is your weekend update out there. Hope everyone is having a fabulous weekend. If you are new to the channel and you do like detailed weather breakdowns on the US and the tropics, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to the water vapor imagery this morning, and you can actually see what's happening. So we have this little stalled frontal boundary now that left all the flooding rains over the past couple of days. That's draped across the deep south with still some instability and a lot of very warm, moist air mass. We have all that drier air again sneaking back into the west with the ridge moving back into that area. Plus, we have another area of concern today that's highlighted over portions of Montana, with a pretty good swirl in the atmosphere that's really going to be impacting those areas up north into Montana. That'll swing across into portions of Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin later on this afternoon, and that's going to set the stage for our severe weather event that could unfold this afternoon. That's where the Storm Prediction Center does have, in fact, that slight risk for severe storms breaking out ahead of that upper level trough. So portions of Iowa getting into Minnesota as well as Wisconsin need to be on high alert later on this afternoon. And some of those could be the most concerning aspect with these storms are going to be your damaging winds. And some of those could be up to hurricane force wind gusts. Is not out of the question. And you do have a large hail potential as well. Talking like quarter size, potentially up to ping pong size hail, and the atmosphere will be rotating as well. So we're talking about all three modes of severe weather later on this afternoon, and the tornado parameter is low, but it's there. So yeah, we do have a tornado aspect with this. So we're getting into that second season, guys, as we head into September, going into October. That's typically a more favored time of year to start to see more severe weather. So we're going to be seeing more of this as we come into September and going into October. And so this is going to be definitely a concern later on this afternoon. Your Cape values are extremely high. Your convective available potential energy, we're talking about 2,000 to 3,000. That's about 3 times your normal, just typical thunderstorms. So yeah, it's definitely got some instability to work with the heat of the afternoon. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I am expecting a round of severe storms. And those, again, the main concern with those would be your damaging winds. Then you have your large hail producers, and then you have your isolated tornado threat later on this afternoon. But there's the instability. It's not just today. It could be running in tomorrow and technically even Monday. So you could have rounds of severe storms right in this sector, right along that upper trough that we're going to be talking about. So here's the breakout right along that boundary where lightning could be unfolding into portions of Oklahoma, getting into Kansas, but especially it's going to be turning severe, heading up into Iowa, getting into Minnesota, and those will swing across into portions of Wisconsin. So if we take a look at the overall simulated water vapor imagery on the latest convection models, you can really see what's happening. I mean, this is a pretty significant swirl happening up in the upper levels. That's going to have all that instability, and that's unfortunately going to bring that round of severe storms out ahead of that main system. So that's where we have that slight risk for severe storms, not just today, but I think it'll probably be upgraded as we go into the day tomorrow. And these will have a pretty significant impact up there with those damaging winds, large hail, and those isolated tornado threat, while the rest of the country dries out with this orange shaded area. A lot of dry air on the backside, as the cold front will actually sink into the Gulf of Mexico, and that actually could be setting up something interesting in the next as we get into Monday and Tuesday. So we'll highlight that feature. So let's take a look at the winds. Like I mentioned, the most damaging aspect of this would be the winds, and this is your overall winds over the next 48 hours. So wherever you see these little ribs showing up, that's an indication not only are these going to be intense winds, but these are fairly quick moving storms, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour storm potential of movement. And then back behind it, we'll have those downburst winds on the backside of that little swirl, but on the front side, we'll have this a lot of lift up in the atmosphere. And yeah, right along Iowa, getting into Minnesota, going into portions of Wisconsin here, that's an indication upwards to maxing out about 82 miles an hour. Of course, not everybody's going to see hurricane force wind gusts, but yeah, there are going to be isolated areas could be picking up some hurricane force wind gusts. So you definitely be on high alert and batten down the hatches later on this afternoon, getting into the early evening time frame. But for the next 48 hours, this is where the rain will be falling in these areas across the U.S. with all that orange moving back into the western parts of the U.S. You got a lot more dry air, unfortunately. So that streak continues into portions off the west, where you will continue to remain dry. I think Portland's, you're working on almost 60 days in a row without a drop of rainfall. So they desperately need the rain out there. But there's the main threat for the next 48 hours is going to be in Iowa, portions of Minnesota, headed into Wisconsin. You got a little bit more sea breeze action down here, and especially along that draped frontal boundary. And then you just have these little isolated, what they call diurnal heating thunderstorms in the heat of the afternoon. Sun goes down, and then they sort of wash themselves out. But further to the south, there was a storm that broke out into Wiley, Texas. I had a follower sent this to me last night, and it was a beautiful storm. Like I said, it was just very isolated, right? But on the backside, the sun was still setting, and it formed this beautiful rainbow, this arching rainbow, and you can actually see the rain shafts coming out of that thunderstorm that just kind of popped up. In the heat of the afternoon, sun went down, this all faded out, but before that, it left a beautiful scene out there in Wiley, Texas. So let's take a look at the setup heading into Monday, going into Tuesday. So we've got that's kind of a slow moving front, right? That's going to be that little trough. That's that instability further north. You can see it up here, what's happening with that really swirl up in the atmosphere. Further south, there's the cold front that's going to be on the move, and that's going to set the stage for more rain for portions of the deep south. Not as prolific as the one last week, for sure, because I think it's going to be a little bit more progressive, a little bit more faster moving. But there's also another little feature out here into the Gulf of Mexico. And what's that? This happened twice before, guys. So, hey, this time of year, whenever you see these little stalled fronts that get out in the Gulf of Mexico, you got a ridge building over the top, lowers the pressures underneath. Yeah, not out of the question. The National Hurricane Center might be marking this as an X in the next day or two of this, again, a little low pressure center trying to drift out into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, taking advantage of all that warm waters along the coast. We've seen this twice before. It did not come to a named storm, but it definitely left a lot of heavy rain in its wake. So regardless if this develops or not, this could actually help elevate these, the water content. And like I said, the water content's pretty high for this time of year, actually in the 90th percentile down here for this time of year. So it doesn't take much. If you got this little lift up in the atmosphere combined with this cold front, portions of South Texas may be hit hard with another flooding potential. So we'll just have to watch this as it progresses of the next day or two. But I wanted to highlight this feature, as don't be surprised the National Hurricane Center puts a little X down this feature just south of Louisiana from this little stalled frontal boundary that's going to drift into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, beyond that, here's kind of the upper level winds, right? So last week I showed you they became flat. And when they went flat, there wasn't much movement. So that's what really set the unleash of all the heavier rains, the intense rains. The atmosphere doesn't show 100%, but it's 90 percentile for this time of year. So it's still capable of very, very heavy rain producers, up to 2 to 3 inches per hour in some of these areas. The difference is you can actually see it on the winds here. It's more from the northwest to the southeast. It's a lot more progressive, right? Moves a lot faster in that situation. So it's less likely that you're still going to get some heavier rains in isolated spots, but it's less likely you'll get the flooding rains as this moves across from north to south with that cold front that's going to be moving across Monday night, especially Monday night, getting into Tuesday, it's going to be draped across Texas, into Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And then by Wednesday, it'll drift off further into central Texas and drift portions of the South Texas. And like I mentioned, we'll have to watch that little swirly action in the Gulf of Mexico right on the edge there and see if it's, tries to get its act together. Beyond that, but I mentioned the fat levels, the water content values are very high for this time of year, essentially running at 90 percentile. So there's a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere, so it doesn't take much in this atmosphere. Get diurnal heating, you get any sort of lift from sort of trigger mechanism to activate this potential in the atmosphere. It's just going to ring itself out, right? It's just going to ring itself out. So that's the concern of these flooding storms going forward into, say, Tuesday, especially into Wednesday, especially along the southern branch here. So, well, let's take a look at the tropics, right? So we've been highlighting these two features. It's been extremely quiet. It's quietest start since 1982. It's been one of the longest stretches we've seen in a long time. It's been over 50-something days without a named storm. I think it was like July the 3rd. It was Colin that came out. So it's been a long time, right? It's been a long time. We got these little features, 20% action into the Caribbean. This was the threat of very heavy rain. I put the video together just the other day. Go back and watch that one. But I am expecting very heavy rain to unfold in the Caribbean, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and this will traverse across into portions of the Yucatan and try to get into the Gulf of Mexico. This is another aspect down here into the open waters of the Atlantic. Now it has a 30% chance of development, and I think this is the one that's going to be a little bit more concerning going forward, especially into next week. So further to the north into the United States, I mentioned this ridge will be really building. You saw the orange, the drier air. The ridge really builds back for the Pacific Northwest. A lot of heat unfolding. You do have a little bit of a cool down taking shape as we get towards the end of the week. This will be September 2nd. It's funny, I was on my news feed yesterday on Twitter and I was scrolling down and someone was forecasting an Arctic invasion. I'm like, 5 degrees below average in August is definitely no Arctic invasion. And I've never actually seen an Arctic invasion in the month of August. So, especially with the major hurricane. There's a reason why you don't get hurricanes in the wintertime, because hurricanes don't like cold air. So you're not going to be able to get a major hurricane and an Arctic invasion at the same time. It's just, it's not going to happen. So I was just like, Arctic invasion, where do they get this stuff from? So anyways, yeah, 5 degrees below average, okay? So nothing, it's a cool down, folks. Definitely no Arctic invasion, but hey, you can definitely see down into Texas, it is indicating a little bit more cooler conditions, in fact, that is an indication maybe that little low pressure center, right? Maybe trying to form a little low level swirl and maybe adding to the cloud cover and the rain aspects down here in portions of Texas. But yeah, the GFS model has been extremely bullish on that little system out in the Caribbean. It's still insisting that it really gets its act together and heads into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. This scenario is very unlikely. It's the only model that's been showing this for days and days and days, and that's the problem, is it has no backup with it. So, but it's still insisted, so it's a less likely scenario. The more concerning scenario is the one behind that, the one that has the 30 percentile from the National Hurricane Center right now. This is a fairly significant swirl just north of Puerto Rico as we head into next weekend. So this would be the concern. And this one definitely has a lot more model guidance, a lot more ensemble member guidance from it. So this, hey, we could be looking at Danielle next week. So the Icon's really good model, and the Icon has support from this little system basically north of Puerto Rico by the time we get into next weekend. The Canadian model has the same thing, and then we also have the European models on board as well. So we're looking at 4 different models, and probably more than that, a lot of ensemble guidance. So this is going to be traversing across. It's got You know, a lot of you know, it's got less shear to work with. Shear is well to the north here. So, but the ridge is going to be building back in. So you have a brief little cool down for the northeast as we head into the first and second couple of days of September with those 5 degrees below average temperatures. But the ridge builds back in, right? So as the ridge builds back in, this will help lower the pressures again, right? So this will help lower the pressures. So yeah, definitely we could be looking at, this is a Labor Day weekend, guys. So we could be looking at potential Danielle here, out here into portions, northern portions, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and then heading in towards the Bahamas. And then we'll actually obviously have to watch the East Coast, but this is definitely a huge concern as we head into next week, going into next weekend. But we got plenty of time to watch this system. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.